Let's talk about this because I don't want to mislead anybody. Knowledge is the forerunner to experience. The more people understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, the how gets easier. And this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. The practical application in understanding that philosophy, that theory, that intellectual knowledge, that information, once you start to apply it and personalize it and demonstrate it, the more you can understand that, why you're doing it and what you're doing it, you get greater value out of it. So we have people that are diagnosed with serious health conditions, that are nurses, that are cancer researchers, that are physicians, that are engineers, or just a person who just really wants to understand the content. Now it's so much easier to forget this information than to remember it. It's just, I always laugh at myself because I have to go back and relearn it again, and I think I know it pretty well, and yet I forget. I don't know why, but it's just the way it is. So when our meditations get stale, it's because we forget what we're doing, right? So the person who really, really takes the time to study instead of watching Netflix, instead of scrolling through TikTok, instead of getting on their phone and doing mindless texts or whatever, they're only going to set aside an hour a day and I'm going to learn this information. When they sit down to do the work, they're present.
Yeah.
They understand if they feel this emotion, that they're going to signal a new gene in a new way. If they feel the other emotion, they're going to down-regulate that gene and up-regulate the gene for their disease. So now it's an understanding.
Yeah.
If I rehearse how I'm going to be mentally, I'm going to install the hardware in my brain. If I keep doing it, it's going to become a software program. I'm going to start acting that way. Okay, if I say I can't, it's too hard, I'm too tired, I don't feel good, those are the things that stop me. Okay, but what if I just start saying anything is possible? I believe in synchronicities. What if I, with my intention and attention, just really get clear on that? Would that be the new voice in my head? So now, the person who's truly present and not thinking about their shower or the emails they have to do or their cell phone or their texts or when they have to take their kids to ballet or whatever, you're going to get to all of that. The person who's truly present, if they follow the instructions, we've seen them have very significant changes. First, in their subjective experience of themselves. Like, wow, my back pain isn't there. That's kind of weird. Or, God, I slept better last night. These small indicators are feedback to tell you that whatever you're doing inside of you is producing a result outside of you. Keep that up over a period of time, and you see instrumental changes taking place in the person. Now, another person who has had a series of traumas, been abused in some way from childhood, is facing a lot of health conditions, a lot of emotional and psychological conditions. We don't want them to heal in 1 week. We want them to work on overcoming those emotional states, and those are the victories. So sitting down in the meditation, and when their body starts getting agitated or starts getting anxious, instead of quitting and saying, I can't meditate, because that would be the extent of that person, just be curious. What's on the other side of this? Can I lower the volume to this emotion? My body's craving this emotion. Let me settle it down into the present moment. That would be a victory. So the moment that is going to define the person. So then the person goes, oh, God, I feel really uncomfortable. I'm not a good meditator. There's something wrong with me. It's my trauma. It's my past. It's my parents. It's whatever. The person who says, no, I'm going to sit in the presence of this anxiety, and I'm going to keep working with my body, and I'm going to keep lowering the volume to that emotion. Now listen, you keep lowering the volume to that emotion, you're going to take your attention off that past problem, because you only put your attention on that past problem because of the emotion. I'll never tell anybody to go back and review their past. I'll say overcome the emotion. I'm down the middle on this, okay? I think there are many modalities that work for trauma. What I've discovered is that insight never really changes behavior. You can see that your father was overbearing or was an alcoholic, or you could see all these different things, like you could come up with the insight of all these different things. The problem that I see with people is then they tend to excuse their change by saying, oh, I had a rough childhood, that's why I am the way I am. They're excusing their present position. So, and again, trauma is a difficult thing, but for me, the person who's living by the identity in their life that they were traumatized as a child or whatever it is, or they've had a trauma in their life, I'm not saying forget the trauma and create another emotion. I'm saying that the person who's willing to go through the emotion and keep working on lowering the volume to it. We have had so many people in this work with brutal pasts, really, really difficult pasts, do the work, and finally they reach that point where they just break free from the emotion. They look back, and I have interviewed enough of them. It's the same thing. They look back at their entire past, and they don't want to change one thing in their past because it brought them to this elegant moment where they're liberated. They see their betrayers, they see their abusers, they have nothing but love for them. Now, the side effect of that, and many times they'll say, it was like my heart blew wide open. They had to pass through the valley of the shadow of darkness to get there. And they just thought, I don't know if I can go any further. And they went one more time. And the body literally was liberated from the past, right? Because the trauma is not just in the brain. The trauma is stored emotionally in the body. So you want to take the body out of the past, out of the known. What do you think the body's going to say if it's been conditioned to be the mind? The unknown is a scary place. You step out into the unknown, you're going to be unprepared for that trauma. You don't know how it's going to happen. And so the person keeps clinging to the known. But when the person finally overcomes the emotion, the body literally is freed from the chains of the past. The side effect of that is seeing the past from a greater level of consciousness. Lo and behold, there goes the suicidal tendencies, there goes the dysfunction, there goes the irritable bowel syndrome. That was because the body was still living in that past event by living by the same emotion. So the research on memory is kind of fascinating, and I've studied it enough. The way we recount the past is not the way it happened, even if you absolutely think you remember it being that way. So we don't have the same brain as we did when we were 8 years old or 12 years old or 20 years old. We have a different brain. We have a completely different brain. So the fabrication of the story for many people, they embellish the story and make it seem even worse than what it was. But what you're saying is, I changed in those moments, and from a biological standpoint, I haven't been able to change since. So let me tell you why it's been so hard for me to change. And the story becomes dramatized or embellished. And the person works them up, fire themselves into this emotional froth, and then fires and wires the same circuits in the brain, and they're actually reaffirming their limitation. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I think we're just taking too long, right? So 50% of that story isn't even the truth. It means, in a sense, we're reliving a miserable life that we never even had. And we don't want, but the unknown, people would rather cling to their suffering. This is not a judgment. We all do this. We'd rather stay in the known than take a chance in the unknown, because those emotions of survival are saying what? Run from the unknown. The unknown is a scary place. So now the unknown, you got to come up against that moment where you're going to actually leave that behind and step into the unknown. This is not an intellectual process. This is David and Goliath. There's a battle going on where the body keeps wanting to go back to its familiar state because it's subconsciously been conditioned to be the mind, stay in the known. So then if the person keeps revisiting the trauma from the past, I'm not certain enough that when they revisit the trauma from the past, unless they learn how to desensitize their emotional response to it, that it's going to work for them. What I learned is that if the person overcomes the emotion, the memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. And now you no longer belong to the past. So the body gets frustrated in the meditation. Instead of taking your blindfolds off or turning the lights on and say, listen to the voice, I can't meditate, this is too much. The sincere person says, what's on the other side of I can't? What's on the other side of this emotion? Let me see if I can settle my body back down out of that emotion and recondition it to a new mind. And the act of doing that in the beginning is very tedious. And all of a sudden, the person starts getting better at it. And they're telling their body it's no longer the mind, that they're the mind. They're executing a will that's greater than that program. And just like training an animal, you stay, you're not going to die, I'm going to feed you, you can check your emails, you can check your texts, but this is my time right now. And you keep doing that when the body keeps settling it down to the present moment. It acquiesces. It surrenders to a new mind. And when that happens, we've seen this, we've measured it, there's a liberation of energy. We go from particle to wave, we go from matter to energy. That emotion is liberated from the body. And now there's energy to heal. There's energy to create a new life. It's available energy. It's free energy.
Yeah.
So the person goes, wow, I see it from a different level of consciousness. I have nothing but love. Or, my goodness, I'm no longer that person. And they're now free from the past. Now, the side effect of that is that there's a biological upgrade. There's a neurological upgrade. There's a chemical upgrade. There's a genetic modification that's taking place. Why? You think the same way, you make the same choices, you do the same things, you create the same experiences, you feel the same emotions. Your biology will stay the same because you're the same. Now the person's thinking differently, they're making different choices, they're doing different things, they're behaving in different ways, they're having new experiences, and they're certainly feeling different emotions. The body reorganizes to a new chemistry. And they'll tell you, I'm not that person any longer. I'm literally not that person. And they're betrayers, even if they're family members, they have forgiveness for them. And what is forgiveness? You take your attention off the emotion. You overcome the emotion. You don't pay attention to the person or the problem. Now you're free. You free yourself and you free them. And say to them, I want you to think about something in your life that you've done that you would like forgiveness for, that you don't feel good about. And forgive that person in the way that you would want to be forgiven, and you would be forgiven yourself. I mean, we've all had indiscretions. Nobody's perfect. So that person that is in that state is still in the emotional state. The problem with that is that no new information can enter the nervous system that is not equal to the emotion the person experiencing, because it's not relevant. So the question really is how long do you want to do that? How long do you want to do that? And again, knowledge and information about what that is doing to that person's health and their biology. If you reason with them, we've had this happen enough times in our work. That's not an uncommon situation. When the person finally takes their attention off that and puts it on something else, they notice that they feel differently.
Yeah.
You can't just tell a person to forgive, because it's kind of an etherical thing. It's a subjective process, right? Yeah. So we've seen this, our oxytocin levels in a lot of our participants go up 200 times, right? That's a lot of love. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals another chemical that literally causes the arteries in your heart and lungs to actually expand. There's more energy, there's more blood going into your heart. Okay. So when that person takes their attention off their ex, takes their attention off their past, and starts looking at themselves, denaturing that identity that's built on the past. See, that person had a reaction to that circumstance, and that reaction produces a refractory period of chemicals and emotions, right? And if you don't know how to control that refractory period, and it lasts for hours or days, it's called a mood. You keep that same refractory period going on for weeks or months, now it's a temperament, one long emotional reaction. You keep that refractory period going on for years on end, that's a personality trait, and most people's personalities are defined by, I am this way because my husband cheated on me. What you're really saying is, you haven't changed in 10 years, and you're giving your vital life force to that person. Who is worth 10 years of your life?
Yeah.
Who's worth it? So then, the stronger the emotion we feel, the more we pay attention to the cause. Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. That person's giving their vital life force to heal, their life force to change to that person or that circumstance. Lower the volume to that emotion.
Yeah.
You take your attention off that person or problem. It's not the person or the problem. They're using unconsciously that person or that circumstance to reaffirm their addiction to that emotion. That's why they keep thinking about it. If they weren't addicted to that emotion, they would stop thinking about it. So then, is it the person? No, it's you're left. We'll take your ex-husband and put him in a rocket, in a straitjacket. Let's shoot him to the moon. Now what? Now what? Now what are you going to do? You still have that
Still got it.
embossed in your brain and conditioned in your body. At what point? So then the research on oxytocin, you can only talk around this. You can't say to someone forgive if they still feel the emotion. They're separate from the act of forgiving.
Yeah.
Imagine feeling so much love by no one's doing it to you. It's actually coming from within.
Yeah.
You have that moment, that catharsis, where you feel that emotion. Oxytocin levels go up just slightly in the research, just a little bit more elevated. An elevation in oxytocin makes it impossible to hold a grudge. They've done the research on the data. You cannot hold a grudge. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You just go, I like this feeling better than that feeling. And because I like this feeling better than that feeling, you're okay. Forget about it. I'm good. That person who falls in love again, whose husband cheated on them, who falls in love again and finds a person who is intelligent and caring and kind and loving and provides, all of a sudden they can forgive that person. Like, oh my God, that had to happen because now I have a better person in my life. Well, if you don't let go of that, you're never going to have this. In fact, if you bring that into the next relationship, you're not going to have a healthy relationship because there's going to be a trust issue on every level. So then you want an equal? Write down exactly what you want and become that person and see what comes to you. Try it out as an experiment. If I really work on, my God, this emotion is actually, now that I understand the science behind this emotion is actually weakening me every day. It's knocking my brain and body out of homeostasis. Stress is when our brain and body are knocked out of homeostasis and balance. Turning on the stress response just by thought alone. Hormones of stress downregulate genes and create disease. My thoughts are making me sick. Is that person or that circumstance worth it? If my thoughts could make me sick, is it possible that my thoughts can make me well? Well, now you got to come up against the belief. No, I don't really want to believe this. Then that really means that you want to stay in that emotional state. But go see some testimonials of people who've had that and see the life that they're living now. The miracles, the synchronicities, the opportunities, the coincidences, the healings. They bless their past. They say, my disease, that condition, that was my greatest teacher.
Yeah.
That was my greatest teacher. And now the soul is free. Like, let's get on. In eternity, it's a big place. You got to hold on to that emotion for how long? You're not doing anything wrong. You're just taking too long. That's all.
Yeah.
And it works. It works with anything. With any, some people want wealth, some they are bankrupt, some people their business partner, took all their money. Some people it's a relationship, some people it's trauma from childhood. It's all the same. But what we're looking for is wholeness. So then, it's not just the emotion. The emotion is driving a certain behavior. The emotion is driving a certain habit of action. The emotion is driving a certain series of thoughts that are associated with that person or that circumstance. If you truly believe that you have the power within you to change, the first step would be saying, I have to take responsibility for myself right now because I got to start thinking differently. I got to start acting differently. I got to start feeling different. It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
If it was easy, everybody would be doing this. But how was self-love born? I've studied this. When the person sits through the fire and sits through all of that anxiety, all that hatred, all that anger, and keeps lowering the volume, sooner or later, the body's going to release it. And when it's released, forgiveness is the side effect. You take your attention off that person because you no longer have the emotion to keep your attention on. And in fact, you feel so good, this feels better that you naturally forgive. It's not like, now you're forgiven. It's not like, hey, look at me, I'm forgiving you. It's just kind of like, wow, isn't life great?
Yeah.
Whoa, you're good. I mean, you're good. I'm getting on with my life right now, right? So emotions keep us stuck in the past, and we tell that story, and we reaffirm it, we get in trouble. Let me just say one thing about that, because you could have the most organic, vegan, gluten-free, ketogenic, triple filtered water, take all your vitamins, take all your nutrients, work out, do Pilates, do yoga, do your breathing. You do all of that. Get your body chemically balanced, get your body physically balanced. But if you're not going to get your body emotionally balanced, forget it.
Yeah.
Because the moment you get emotional, your body literally goes to the past. That's the one that matters the most. And people, once they realize it's the emotion that's signaling the gene, oh my God, I better start really taking care of my emotional balance as much as I do with my physical exercise and my diet and all that other stuff. Look, I mean, we're human beings, we're so programmed for survival. And when you're in survival and you're threatened and there's a danger, you prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
So the person who's traumatized is actually anticipating the event to happen again. And they're preparing themselves for the worst case scenario because there's better chances of survival if you prepare for the worst. So the brain naturally fabricates an outcome, but actually it actually says, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And now we're this is a really vivid imagination, but it's working against us in a lot of ways. So there's nothing wrong with this. I mean, we've all done it. You've had a trauma, you've had an insult, you've had, a betrayal, you have whatever, and then you get wise from the experience, but then you're always, if it's really a strong trauma, then you're expecting it to happen again, right? So the brain is selecting out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field, the worst case scenario, and then emotionally embracing the outcome before it happens, a thought and a feeling, an image and an emotion, a stimulus and response, and they're conditioning their body into the mind of that emotion. They're reliving their past in their future every single day in the present moment. And now it becomes a very visceral and subconscious process. So it takes an enormous amount of will. It takes an enormous amount of awareness and energy to break that apart. And we have so many brain scans of people that have severe anxiety. And you cannot be anxious if you're in the present moment. And they just kept catching themselves, going to that thought and feeling that feeling and bringing it back. And then getting frustrated and going, ah. And then all of a sudden they're there again. Well, why are they there? Because they've been practicing that. You keep practicing feeling anxious, you get really good at it. You start practicing feeling gratitude, you get really good at that. We're doing a study with children in Australia, and I say to them, you practice being angry, you'll get good at being angry. You practice being kind, you get really good at being kind, and it feels 20 minutes or so, or 30 minutes, depends on me. I'm in my think box. And then the next hour and a half, if it takes me an hour, Rangan, to get to the present moment, I will not get up for my meditation until I get there. So I'm just uncompromising to that because I know that if I overcome myself, it's the overcoming process, that's the becoming process. So if I stretch myself past, it doesn't feel good, and I break through, then I'm a different person the rest of the day. If I get up and quit, then I'm the same guy. I can't expect anything really magical to happen in my life. So I'm just willing to just go that distance because I think that if you get up as the same person that sat down, nothing really happens. Nothing really happens. And we've talked to so many people that have had so many transcendental, profound experiences, and they look back at all the meditations that they've done, and it's not the good ones they remembered. It's the ones where they sat through the fire and they love themselves for doing it. They love themselves because they sat through it. That's really the value behind all of this. So for the person who's on the journey, like for me, I'm just the type of guy that, like, if I do a meditation and I make it through it and it wasn't a pretty meditation, that discomfort bothers me the whole day. It bothers me because I don't want to do that again. And I want to make sure that I'm not thinking about the news, or I'm not thinking about what people think about me. I'm not thinking about all that, any of that stuff. I'm really thinking about what happened there, Joe. Like, where did you go? Like, why are you feeling this way? Because I'm disturbed by something because I think I could do better. It's like he's like a martial artist, you're sparring somebody, you kicked in the face 3 or 4 times. Sooner or later you say, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
what? And you sit there and you think about it over and over again, and it bothers you until you figure it out. And then what people say to me, wow, 2 hours in the morning, you know? I say, listen, it's really simple. If I can overcome myself, at the beginning of the day, the rest of my day, I can overcome anybody.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just okay with it. When you're okay with yourself, you're okay with anybody. When you're angry with yourself, you're angry with others. If you're unhappy with yourself, you punish other people that feel unhappy because you want them to feel the way you do. It's just the way it is. You're grateful you get up grateful.
Yeah.
You get up grateful just for the fact that life is a gift. I'm alive. I got a body. I have a family. I have people that love me. I can eat. I have a home. Kind of running water in my shower. I feel pretty good. Yeah, I made a bunch of mistakes, but I'm alive.
Yeah.
Hey, a new day, new life. You know, you get up grateful that way, and you start seeing these coincidences happening in your life. I guarantee you, the meditation will no longer be about a have to. That's what I love about our community. We don't do the work because we have to do the work or to please God or be holy or any of that stuff. People do the work because they don't want the magic to end. The moment you see the coincidence happen in your life, you're going to stop believing that you're the victim of your life, and you start believing you're the creator of your life. And when you do, what do you think that synchronicity creates? Do you think it creates sadness or pain? The synchronicity wakes you up. You feel a little energy. You feel a little joy, and that inspires you. Like, the experiment's kind of working.
Yeah.
I think I'll show up tomorrow for the experiment again. Hey, that's kind of weird. Hey, I'm going to do it again. Wow. And then you don't want to stop doing it because you start realizing that you actually can produce effects in your life.
Yeah.
I don't care what kind of past you've had. I don't care. You can't even tell me you're too sick to do this work. You can't tell me you're too old to do this work. You can't tell me I never meditated before to do this work. You can't even tell me that you had a brutal past that you can't do this work. I've seen it happen. All races, all colors, all sizes, all shapes, all diets, all pasts, all social status. Nobody's so special to be excluded from this principle. And so the act of making time to be a creator in your life, if you make time to be a creator in your life, that means you must believe that you're a creator in your life. If you don't make time or you don't do it, you don't believe that you're the creator in your life.
Yeah.
You're believing in your past more than you're believing in your future. You show up to do the work because you want to believe in your future more than you believe in your past. And there's some people that do this work that get up and believe less in their past because they didn't overcome themselves. And then there's people who do it every day and they get up and they believe more in their future every day. And the side effect of that are all these wonderful changes that begin to happen in a person's life. And they say what everybody says, I knew it was the truth. I just had to prove it to myself. So, I would say you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. I mean, if you don't have time now, make time when you can. But for the most part, I mean, I want to inspire people to not wait for that crisis or that trauma or that disease or that loss to really change. I want them to be inspired to try it out. It's an experiment. The hardest part about all of this, Rangan, is actually making the time to do it. It's the hardest part about all of this. When we make time for our precious selves, when we invest in ourselves, we invest in our future. And in order for us to believe in ourselves, we have to believe in possibility. And when we believe in possibility, we believe in ourselves. So it doesn't even have to be a long amount of time. Do a little experiment. Say, I'm not going to think these thoughts. I'll write them down. I'm not going to act this way or speak this way. And today I'm going to work on just staying conscious of these feelings. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to close my eyes for a few moments and remember that I'm not going to do these things. If that's the start, you just demystified meditation, because meditation means to become familiar with. To become familiar with, that symbol is familiarization. To become so familiar with yourself that you can become familiar with a new self and not default back to the old person. We all default. We all react. That's not the question. The question is, how long are you going to react? How long are you going to do that for? And so we have a choice. Try it out as an experiment. Little time. Just a little time. If you don't have the time, when people say, "Well, I don't have the time," I say, "Well, get up earlier." And they say, "Well, I'm tired." And I say, "Well, go to bed earlier." What am I going to say? I mean, what is it? When is it going to? When do you want to do it? If you don't want to do it and you don't have the time, don't do it. If it inspires you to do it, I want you to do it. Only do it if you're inspired. Don't do it because you have to. Do it because you want to try the experiment out.